Welcome. I hope you are having a wonderful night, dear viewer. Tonight, I will be telling some terrifyingly scary stories. Make sure to leave your feedback on the comments so I can make this the best experience for you. And if you have any stories you would like me to tell, you can send them through the link in the description. Let's begin. I was probably around 12 to 13 years old when I went to rent a horror DVD with my friend, who was the same age. It was the year 2002, and internet access wasn't as common as it is today. We walked into the DVD store and approached the lady who worked there. We asked her for the scariest film she knew, and she recommended Blair Witch. She mentioned that everyone else had told her it was based on true stories. That's exactly what we were looking for, so we took it without hesitation. That Saturday night, my friend and I were home alone as our parents were away for the weekend. I settled in to watch the complete film while my friend started playing darts. He found it boring, but I suspected he might have been scared. I watched the movie alone until the very end, and it terrified me. Being young and without internet access to find out more about it, the fact that the movie claimed to be based on true stories made it even more frightening. My friend's parents came to pick him up, leaving me alone in the house. My mom had these little witch figurines in the downstairs and upstairs bathrooms, and I still can't fathom why she had them. Anyway, I was super scared to go to the toilet at night for the next few nights. In the meantime, my parents returned home. Then, 4 days after watching the film, one night around 1 a.m., I woke up and had to go to the bathroom again. I saw those stupid witches once more and was still terrified to go. Despite my fear, I mustered the courage to make the trip. After I finished, I sprinted back to my bedroom. However, as soon as I closed my bedroom door, I heard 3 hard knocks on it. Those few minutes were the most horrifying moments of my life. I bolted to my bed, dove under my blanket, and trembled like I never had before. I was absolutely terrified. But then, after about 10 minutes, things got even worse. I heard 3 gunshots in the hallway upstairs, just behind my bedroom door. That was it. I had to run to my parents' bedroom on the other side of the house for safety. I ran, swung their door open, and to my horror, they weren't there. It felt like my heart had stopped. Panicked, I rushed into my sister's bedroom and she immediately dialed my dad's mobile phone. It turned out they were at my uncle's birthday party and hurried back home as soon as they received the call. Finally, I began to calm down. The next day, I approached my mom and told her she had to get rid of all the witches in the bathrooms. I never wanted to see one again in my entire life. What on earth were they doing there? I remained scared for weeks after that incident. I'll never forget it, and at the same time, I was embarrassed for being such a scaredy cat. Even to this day, I still wonder if I had made it all up, but it felt so incredibly real at the time. Perhaps that's what fear does to you. Many of you are familiar with a Ouija board, right? In Japan, there is a similar game called Kokuri. It differs slightly in that the board is written on a sheet of paper and a coin, usually a 5 or 10 yen coin, is used in place of a planchette. I've only played the game once, and as a result, had some strange occurrences. I cannot even truly say that this game was the catalyst for my strange experience, as other things may have been a contributing factor. Summer season in Japan is when ghost stories are often told. Many will test their will by visiting places. It's like the month of October and Halloween, the season for it. It was summer 2005, I believe. My best childhood friend had asked if we all wanted to get together one evening. His girlfriend wanted to introduce some of her single friends to some guys. Naturally, this piqued our interests as the rest of us were single. We decided that visiting a haunted place would be a cool activity to do. The girls would be scared. We could act brave and courageous and impress them. So that's what we did. In the interest of not scaring the complete living shit out of them, we visited a rather mild spot. It was spooky, but not at all frightening. The plan sort of worked as the girls were spooked by the old park that we visited that evening and wanted to be close to a guy. No complaints from any of us, lol. Afterwards, we're all laughing and joking as a couple of the girls were scared by a jump scare that my friend's girlfriend plotted. As a group, we decided that we should find a cafe to grab some refreshments, snacks, and chill out a bit. We arrived at a nice little cafe and got settled in at our table. While we waited on our order, the group reflected on our evening and talked about the park and how it was creepy. Then we all started talking about urban legends that we had heard about it. All in all, one could say a typical summer evening in Japan. At some point, one of the girls, LC, asked if any of us had played Kokuri. There was immediate laughter as many admitted that they had played the game when they were in middle school and high school. There were a couple of us who admitted that we never played the game. C begins to explain the game and how it is played. One of my friends, N, taps my foot. I glance at him, and he grins. I thought to myself, the night is still young, and that could be something we could do. I was hitting it off well with another girl and didn't want the night to end. In a spontaneous matter, my friend N suggests that we all head back to his apartment, and that we should play the game. C broke the silence that followed, and said we should all go and play. It'll be fun. With everyone on board, we pay our tab and then head off. As our group made our way to N's apartment, we stopped off at a convenience store and bought some wine and cheese. We get to N's apartment and everyone settles in. We all sat down in the living room and C asked for a sheet of paper, a pen, and a 10-yen coin. Wine glass in hand, she begins drawing up the Kokuri board and reminds everyone how the game is played. We opened a window as this allows a spirit to enter your home so that you can communicate with it. We begin to play the game, and no one takes it seriously. Lots of snickering and witty dialogue litter the moments that followed. We're all having fun, yet the coin is unresponsive and is just someone forcibly moving it. My money was on C, lol. At the time, I was convinced that C moved the coin in response to each question, asked to get a rouse out of everyone. She supposedly spoke with a spirit, and it seemed really silly. I discounted all the responses as I thought this was full of shit. I think most of the group lost interest. In keeping with tradition, we tore up the paper into 48 pieces, and C promised that she would spend the 10-yen coin the following day to prevent any misfortune to our group. In keeping with the spooky summer topics, someone suggested that we play a traditional storytelling game called Hyakumonogatari Kaidan-kai, which I don't expect any of you to pronounce. Hyakumonogatari Kaidan-kai basically translates into a gathering of 100 strange stories. A quick background on this is the game. The game is played traditionally in the summer. A group of people gather and light 100 candles at night. Each person tells a scary story or urban legend or a personal story. Something to that effect. As each story ends, a single candle is extinguished. As you can imagine, as more stories are told and more candles are extinguished, the light around grows dimmer and dimmer. The incremental dimming of a candlelight is believed to channel spiritual energy. Eventually, it will come down to one candle left. The belief is that once that final story is told, and the final candlelight is extinguished, someone or something would be waiting in the complete darkness. Now, we didn't have 100 candles, nor would we put that much effort into it. But Japanese convenience stores are really just that convenient. YouTube it, and see why so many love them. A quick trip to the convenience store, and we were able to get enough candles for our party. We lit all the candles and turned the lights out. As we all sat around in a circle, the dancing of candlelight bathed N's living room. There was a lot of giggling. There was a bit of uneasiness with a couple of participants, but hey, nobody likes being called a chicken or teased, because they were too scared to play. It was all in or nothing. So N started and began to tell a spooky tale. His tale was a pretty standard ghost story that most Japanese are familiar with. I would go into further detail, but for the sake of brevity, I won't. Most can be Googled and probably on YouTube. At the end of his tale, he extinguished his candle. In sequence A, C, and the others told their story and extinguished their candles. I was the last one left to tell my story. Everyone pretty much just told the typical stories that we all grew up hearing. I could have gone the same route, but no one really commented on any personal experiences. I thought that I should take the fear factor up a notch, and decided in the moment that I should tell one of my experiences. Now, if you've read my 2 previous posts, you probably have an idea where I'm going with this. I then proceeded to tell everyone about my experience, years prior, at Ozamizo Park when I received a weird phone call. I remember everyone leaning in to listen attentively as I chose a personal story to share. I told the story to the best of my memory. Finally, after I retold the tale, the room was silent. I blew out the candlelight. The room was pitch black. There was a moment of silence where you could hear everyone breathing. I swear I heard everyone's hearts beating fast, but it was probably just mine. There was a quick scream as one of the girls was startled, probably C, scaring someone. Then someone, probably N, made a farting noise and we erupted in laughter. N flicked the lights back on. I remember the girl sitting next to me, inching closer towards talking about how the suspense grew as we all told stories. Anyway, the girl I was hitting it off with gave me her number, and we decided that we should get together sometime later in the week. It was well past on Ian, and we decided that it was time to go. I head back home. I had trouble sleeping that night as I experienced a weird dream. In this dream, I was in someone's home. The home was in a high-rise condo. It was in the afternoon, and I was at the entrance of the home. I begin to walk inside the home as I'm curious, because I don't recognize it. I see a man pacing in the living room, pacing back and forth. He is upset about something and really sad. Behind him, the sliding glass doors to the balcony are open. Some light beige curtains billow as a summer breeze pushes through. I try to speak with the man, but he doesn't respond. I keep calling out to him, but it was as if I didn't exist. I can see him smacking his head, throwing his arms down in anger. Again, I tried to ask him if he's all right. Nothing. Then his head turns to me, and we make eye contact. I see his face and do not recognize it. He then turns towards the sliding glass doors and begins running out on the balcony. Leaping over the man, proceeds to fall. I wake up covered in cold sweat. It's 7:30 a.m. I yawn and then get up to search for something to eat. That day, I kept thinking about the dream. It was so vivid. I found it strange because I tend to not remember any of my dreams. But this dream I can 100 remember. The rest of my day went oddly uneventful. Later that week, I met with the girl that we played the game with, and we had a little date. Things went just fine. A couple days later, I'm hanging out with N and telling him how my date went. He was glad that fixing up worked. I could tell something troubled him as well. He had bags under his eyes. He wasn't sleeping well. We walk around a shopping center just walking and people watching, chatting about various things. I could tell there is something he wanted to talk about, but I couldn't get it out of him. We decided to hop in my Civic and take a drive. He suggested us driving to the beach. Change the scenery. It would do us both a bit of good. We're passing through my neighborhood. Beachbound. There is a bit of traffic as we're inching our way up to the traffic light. To the left of where my car was stopped on the road was the local McDonald's, and to the right, on the other side of the street, was a large, high-rise condo complex. We're in mid-conversation about music, when through the window, out of the corner of my eye, I see something like a shadow drop down. Instinctively, I turn my head to investigate. It was the man I dreamt about. Suddenly, N starts crying and screams for me to pull onto a side road to get the hell out of there. I felt something inside of me telling me to get away from there too. There was barely enough room, but I managed to miraculously pull a U-turn. Running the red light, I begin driving aimlessly as tears roll down my cheeks. After a few minutes, I pull into a post office parking lot. I look at Nee and begin to speak. I told him that I know this is going to sound crazy, but I had this dream. I look up to see his pale face as I start explaining the dream. I take a moment to pause and catch my breath. N picks up where I stopped off and begins to describe the room in detail. He pauses, and while looking at me, he mentions light beige curtains in between his sobs. We both make eye contact, and I think we both saw the horror in our eyes. He states that he saw his face too. There was no mistake. That was the guy in the dream we somehow shared. He jumped N's dream too. Word eventually got around to everyone that was with us on the night we played Kokuri and the gathering of 100 scary stories, and no one had any explanation. C even mentioned that it's weird because we didn't have any real contact with anything. For some reason, N broke with his girlfriend. The girl I was seeing ended up not working out. I doubt that had anything to do with our experience, but maybe it did. Perhaps it was the misfortune. To this day, we don't have any explanation. That was the last time that we visited anywhere spooky, played spooky games, or anything that would channel spiritual energy. The high-rise that the man jumped from is very close to my mother's house. I never ate at the McDonald's again, and would never drive that way. If I needed to pass through that area, I took a different route. This experience really messed us up. And I went through a brief period where we didn't talk to each other. I remember being really paranoid and scared. We probably should have sought counseling after that. I work and live in the US. Now, I still go home to visit Japan every so often, at least until COVID happened, and still do not frequent the area where that man fell during the day nor at night. Thankfully, I've never experienced another dream quite like that again. But sometimes I still wonder why my friend and I had that dream, and the meaning behind it all. I wonder if we somehow channeled some spiritual energy that may have been malicious. Again, I've got nothing. Ann and I are still friends to this day. It's understood between us that we do not talk about what happened or even remotely reference anything about it. I tried a couple times to bring it up to come to some kind of closure, but N would immediately change the subject, or pretend that he didn't hear anything. As a matter of fact, he doesn't even know that I am writing this post. For me, I feel like this is giving me some sense of closure, letting all of this off my chest. I do not mess with things like that anymore. I guess the moral to this story is do not trifle with things that you do not fully understand. They're looking through my car window. I saw a man. His legs tangled in the now deformed guardrail due to the impact of his body. The whites of his eyes drew my attention, with his eyes still open and looking at me. I couldn't pull my eyes away. The manager of the McDonald's burst out the entrance and begins yelling for help. I found myself in a bit of a daze. I couldn't take my eyes off the man. In absolute horror, I kept staring because